Right, so hopefully, I'm going to hopefully fix the computer. Okay. First of all, I want to say that not all the topics in the section we're going to discuss tonight. Some of the topics that, on the agenda tonight are, well, two of them discuss women involved in Judaism, their place in Judaism. So after preparing, I thought it'd be a good idea to have my wife teach that section. So you'll see in your questions that were supposed to be covered tonight, question number 7 and 8 revolves around women in service of God and the mitzvot. So Cyril is going to give that part of the class next week. And instead, what I did was I took stuff from class 4, and I incorporated into tonight's class, so we'll be able to skip around. All right, I think everyone comes for braving the wicked weather, here in Florida. All right, section number 1, page 98. Sorry, I had to. Okay, it's everybody knows that Hollywood is full of Jews. The question is why? So Universal Studios was founded by a Jew, Karl Laemmle from Germany. Adolf Zucker, Hungarian Jew. Paramount Pictures. Fox film was made by William Fox. Warner Brothers was started by a Jew named Warner and from Russia, and is from Poland. Anyway, we're all over the place. So there's a few answers to this question. Number 1 is the most simple answer, is anti-Semitism. When the Jewish people came to the United States, it was an unofficial, unwritten rule that we don't allow Jews into certain industries. So it was much harder for a Jew to get into Harvard or a school of higher education. In fact, there's a very good book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers: The Secret to Success. So in it, he talks about how certain Jewish law firms did very well. I think it was in tort law, if I remember correctly. And he explains why was that? Because the Jewish people were not able to get into traditional law firms, and the traditional law firms were practicing other types of law, whatever it was, certain types of litigation. So they went into that area of law, which was kind of left on to the curb. And when it came big in the 60s and 70s, or what it was in the 50s, they were already experts at it. So what happened was, if you read text number 1, by a book, Empire of the Road by Neil Gabler, he says that Jews were forced into Hollywood because there was no other. So they started it, and interesting. The second paragraph, it says the Jews always had a special compatibility with the industry, one that gave them certain advantages over their competitor. They were into fashion, so they knew what people wanted. So that's what happened. Like I say, the joke says, the Jew Shlomi couldn't get a job, so the priest says, "Listen, if you convert, I'll give you $1,000." So he goes and he converts. He goes into the church. His friend asks him, "Nu Shlomi, they give you $1,000?" Says, "You Jews, what do you think about his money?" Right? So it was because, some people say it was because of anti-Semitism that the Jews made it into Hollywood, and they started like 20th Century Fox, which you heard the music, and Warner Brothers and Paramount Pictures. And what do? When a guy needs a job, you give your kin a job, right? That's the way it is. I think the fact that I live here in Pembroke Pines, I'm the rabbi in Pembroke Pines, is just a coincidence. My brother is a rabbi in Cooper City. He knew a place that needed a rabbi. He called me, right? my brother-in-law Itcha lives down here. You think he just decided to move down to Pembroke Pines? No, because we lived here, so he came here. That's the way it is, right? So Mr. Warner knew Mr. Klein, and everybody called their friend, and that's how Jews became very, very involved in the movie industry in Hollywood. Another interesting thing, which you can argue, I mean, it's an interesting point to argue. You see text number 2, they did a Pew Research study. And what's important in Judaism, this is page 99 in your books. What's important in text 2 and 3, by the way, are interviews. The full videos will be sent out in the link after class. You can watch. But interesting when they ask, what's important to Judaism, aside from being practiced and all these different things. So some people answered humor. You have to have a good sense of humor. If you're going to be Jewish, it's essential part of what being Jews means. That means that humor is a single percentage point behind caring about Israel. And you see text number 3, this Tim Kazurinsky, who was a writer for Saturday Night Live, and you see a very interesting text, just how important humor features in the Jewish approach to everything. We have a way of turning, everything has a joke. Even Jews have there's a joke about, it has more to do with the faith of Jewish people having God. We question God, but still, we still believe. So the joke goes that these 10 rabbis decided to convene a court, the Bet Din, to bring God to a court case because of the Holocaust. So they're debating the whole day. Is God right? Is God wrong? God knows what he's doing. Finally, it's getting late in the afternoon. One rabbi stands up and says, hey, we got to finish. We got to daven mincha, right? That's a Jewish joke that, we even turn the Holocaust into a joke. Everything is a joke. And about what?
They're in the camp, and they have a trial. And I think they put God on trial for the...
Right. It's a very, very Jewish thing to do. To everything, you find the light side in it. So, and you don't see it by Chabad weddings, but in the Hasidic community, there's something called a badchen. It's a comedian, like a jester. He goes to a wedding, and they make jokes. And on Purim, there's something called a Purim there. A thought which has no basis in halacha and Jewish law, and you make out the whole some kind of law that doesn't make any sense. So Judaism has always featured humor. As you see in text number 4, very, very interesting. There was a conversation between Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, and Rabbi Baruch. And they're sitting there and they're talking about who has a portion in the Garden of Eden, basically who's going straight to heaven without having to go through any trial and tribulation. Page 101, text number 4. So they talk about, in the Gemara it talks about it. There's one guy, he does all these nice things, and then Eliyahu Navi says, you see these 2 guys? They're going to heaven. So Rabbi Baruch says, what do they do to go to heaven? So go ask them. So Rabbi Baruch goes over to them and says, why are you going to heaven? He says, we're comedians. We cheer those who are sad. If you notice, by the way, it doesn't say anything about service of God. It just says we make people happy. Connotation regarding why they're going to heaven. It says we are comedians. We cheer up those who are sad, which tells us joy is good in and of itself. That means when you're joyous, it can lead to great things. So not only in the service of God, just being happy is good in itself. So maybe you can contend, maybe you can say that the fact that Jews always wanted to make people laugh and wanted to entertain people, so the natural flow of this talent would go into Hollywood. That's an interesting thought, which might be true. But let's get a little deeper, because those are just theories. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic movement, taught us that every single person is in every single place for a reason. That means the fact that you're here or you're in a certain place at a certain time, that's not a coincidence. The word coincidence doesn't exist in the vernacular of a Jewish person. Every time we end up in a place, it's to serve a purpose. So the fact that the Jewish people are in Hollywood means it has to serve something in the greater purpose, which is to recognize that the existence of God. Look at text number 5 with Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, a follower. Exactly. Levi Yitzchak Berditchev says based on with this text, let's not ask why, because like they say in Yiddish, on a story you don't ask questions, right? Because that's just on reality you don't ask questions. That's just the reality. Instead, let's ask what purpose. So you see text number 5 on page 102. He says, we should clearly recognize that our travels to different places are not random. Rather, it says in Psalm, God establishes the steps of man. Therefore, when you come to a particular place, we must take this to heart and ask ourselves, why am I here? We can argue that what has been the most influential medium in the past 70, 80 years? The movies. I was listening to NPR yesterday, and they were talking about gun laws and everything else. And someone on the radio said that after the movies with Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, and the gun he has in that movie is called a Magnum 40. Okay, so the person on the radio said that the sales of the Magnum gun after the movie skyrocketed, and the guy said it's not even a good gun. He said it makes too much noise, it's hard to handle, whatever. But because he saw it in the movies, everybody wanted that gun. I mean, I went to a birthday party on Sunday, and everything was Batman, right? And this is a 3-year-old kid, not even 3. He loves Batman. So the effect that we have in movies, the movies have on us, is very powerful. And throughout generations, movies have started a push in a direction. But now we all into about homosexual rights and everything else. But think of the movie with I think it's called Philadelphia, right? Right, about that, and look at the Schindler's List, what it did for Holocaust awareness, and now with the movie that won best movie, Spotlight. It's all about. I didn't watch it, but it's all about about child abuse. So what I'm trying to say is that through movies we have a power to influence. Look what SeaWorld, what happened to SeaWorld after the movie with the whales. The ability to send a message over the silver screen is very, very strong. And our job as Jewish people is to be a light unto the nations. Our job as a Jewish people commanded by the Torah is to make this world a more moral and ethical place to live. Not for us, for everybody. And if there's some slight going on and we can send a message that this some way is better, then that's the way it should be. So maybe, just maybe, the reason why the Jews gravitated towards Hollywood, because there was a natural gravitational pull. The Jews, and I once read an article, I had to dig it up, where the guy says, using this logic, he says, if you look at all the movements to better society, whether it's communism or most revolutions, the Jews are involved. Why? Because there's a natural gravitational pull that a Jew has to make the world a better place. And they naturally go to the medium they feel. It could be it's incorrect, like communism, for example, but they feel that we're going to make the world a better place. So, interesting point. Any questions? Any insight? Any want to argue with me? So simple? No? Oh, here we go. Okay, so no social barriers, lower financial barriers. We said that already. So no matter the plot or gene, a film should be reinforced with faith, goodness, and moral values. So if we have this, then the movie is the movie serves it. Okay, next question. And by the way, from this question 2, we're gonna after these next 2 questions, we're gonna jump to class 4, because it also talks about Judaism and other religions. All right. Why do we believe that Jews cannot convert out of Judaism? Let's make this question a little stronger. We live in a world now that if you don't like what you're doing, you opt out. We live in the world of everything's disposable. Right? I remember when I was learning to become a rabbi, and the laws of kosher are very intricate. What happens if a milk spoon falls into a meat pot? Because as Jewish people, Joe, we keep meat and milk separate, and we have separate dishes. So what happens if it's and it gets very complicated. So it's very, very technical. So one day I was frustrated. I go to the rabbi, I say, the heck with it. your meat spoon falls into your milk pot, toss it. Go to Macy's, go to Walmart, buy yourself a new pot. What are you driving the rabbi crazy for? Just get a new pot. So that's not the point. The point is to know what's right or wrong. But in general, why did I ask that question? Because I'm a young punk. It's also not my money, so I'm always right. So and for me, what's the difference? My kids lose pencils. Don't worry, we'll go to Walmart. We'll buy more. And this is not only material things, even who we are. So you don't feel happy with who you are, you change who you are, right? Caitlyn Jenner used to be Bruce Jenner, right? Now she's not Caitlyn Jenner, and he was whatever. It was a very famous person, right? And I don't know if you remember, this was a scandal last year. There was a white woman who pretended she was black. I think it was in Washington. She was part of the NAACP. Right, she has, and she's white as snow. She was, see pictures of her as a teenager. Why? Because she decided she doesn't want to be white. She wants to be black. So with everything in society, you want to be something else, no problem. It comes to being Jewish, Rabbi, I don't want to be Jewish anymore. Sorry, you're stuck. Too bad. Can't do it. But I don't want to be Jewish. I'm not asking you what you want to be. That's what you are. So where did this question come up first? This is not a new question. This is an old question. When the Jews lived in Spain and then also Portugal, they forced the Jews to convert. So some of the Jews ran away, but some of the Jews stayed. And the Inquisition went after these Jews. Interesting, the Inquisition didn't go after the Jews who identified as Jews, because those were a project for later. They went after the Jews that identified that they thought they were Christians, and they thought maybe they were acting as Jews in private, which some of them were. Anyway, so when these Jews managed to escape, or their kids, they wanted to come back to Judaism. The question is, do they have to convert again? What do you say?
No.
Why not?
Because you're Jewish. They were Jewish.
But this was a question that they dealt with in the 14 and 1500s.
Just a point of reference. Had nothing to do with this. I was talking to somebody today. I was giving blood, and I mentioned the Inquisition, and they go, "The what?"
Yeah.
The what? They never heard of Inquisition.
Yeah. A lot of people, they never.
Well, when I went to school, we weren't taught it. We were talking how good Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand was.
Yeah. Because why should they? Why? I remember when I was in high school, I was learning about ancient Egypt and everything else. I said, why are we learning about things 5,000 years ago? There's so much to learn within the past 1,000, 2,000 years. But listen, you can't teach everything. When I was growing up, they conveniently left out the Vietnam War. They went from World War II, to, so whatever, that's the way it is. So, but this was a question that was dealt with in the Middle Ages. The Rambam dealt with it in the 1200s because Christians and Muslims forcibly converted, or Jews converted under intense pressure, and they wanted to come back. The question is, do they have to convert? Meaning, do they become an outsider that now they have to convert to become an insider? So Shlomo Duran writes in text number 6. Shlomo Duran was a rabbi in the 1500s. And he was a rabbi in Algiers, and he dealt with this. And he says that these people who were anusim, it's called Maranos, or they call anusim. Anusim means people who were forced. We have to take them back. Not take them back, meaning they don't have to do anything. That means even if the mother was an apostate, you see in the second paragraph over there, the first paragraph, very strong language. The same applies to the children, even if they're born from a Jewish, even an apostate, has clearly stated in the Talmud, and he gives a few verses that even if this would continue for innumerable generations, the children would still be Jews. So if someone comes into my office and says, I'm Jewish, or whatever it is, I say, was your mother Jewish? I don't say, was your mother observant? Was your mother Jewish? Because it doesn't make a difference how your observance level, which we'll get to at a later point. So we engage converts in this process and help them decide if they truly. So if somebody wants to come convert, we say, listen, you want to convert? There's a whole process if you want to do it. But someone who's in is in. I mean, the covenant the covenant is irrevocable, and a Jew is a Jew. And now some people say they want to be cynical about it. They say, the reason why we have this policy is because Judaism wants to bolster its numbers. As it is, we're very small, and if we start letting people go, then it's a numbers game. But if this was the case, then why would we have a maternal law, meaning that only a person born from a Jewish woman is Jewish, as opposed to, for example, in Islam, if your father is Muslim, then you're a Muslim. If any of your parents are Muslim, but in Judaism, it's not like that. And also, number two, if we wanted numbers, we would pursue converts, which we'll deal with in a moment. We don't proselytize. We don't pursue converts. We welcome those who want to convert, but we don't pursue them. And number three, if that was the case, then it would claim the only way to heaven is through being Jewish, and all other paths lead to hell. But we don't tell that to people. That's not. We don't make those claims, which tells us that it's not about expanding our numbers. That's not what it's about. The reason why a person can't leave Judaism. So let me give you an example. In that my teacher told me when I was learning, and he said it in Jewish. And if you've been to any of my classes, you've heard me use this example. He said, "There's the wood, and then there's the woodness." In Yiddish, there's the Holz und der Holzkeit, which means you could take a piece of wood and you can slack it and design it and cut it and make it very ornate, or you could smash it and cut it into small pieces. But something that the smallest speck of a piece of wood and the largest redwood in the forest sheer is that they're wood. That's their identity. You can't take out the identity from what it is. You can dress it up. You can make it look nice. It could be very raw, but it is what it is. In the book, by the way, I had the book over here. It's a very, very nice book. It's called I Am Jewish. It's up there. Reflections about the I think it was Wall Street Journal journalist Daniel Pearl, right? When he was killed. So a lot of people wrote about their identity. The book is very nice. It's like has like 50 or 60 different people write short essays, and he writes, and he brings a Joshua Molina, who's an actor and a producer, and he writes, well, yes, for me, the statement "I am Jewish," text 7, page 105. It says, "For me, the statement "I am Jewish" is no different than the statement "I am." That's what you are. See, unfortunately, the question for discussion. On page 106, what point is Molina trying to convey? How would you explain it? See, some people think that being Jewish is something you assume you bring on yourself. So if I choose to be Jewish, then I'm Jewish. If I choose not to be, then I'm not. Almost like saying they think being Jewish means you eat matzah balls. If you eat matzah balls, that's really acting Jewish. You eat bagels, lox, and cream cheese, because BLC, not BLT, right? If you eat bagels, lox, and cream cheese, then you're a Jew, right? You pastrami, whatever it is. That means there's Jewish culture, there's Jewish stuff. That's not true. Like if a guy doesn't like matzah balls, do we say, okay, you sit in the back of the temple? Judaism is not about culture. There are cultures. In fact, there are many different cultures. I mean, I think we're all Ashkenazim here, sort of. But you go speak to a Yemenite Jew, what they eat, they have a whole different menu. They have a whole different menu from what Ashkenazim eat. For example, I don't know how many of you guys Ashkenazic Jews know this, but the Sephardic Jews, on the night after Passover, they make a massive meal. It's called I can't remember now. No. But they'll make a whole celebration. Make a whole celebration. Ashkenazim, we eat pizza. Yeah.
And she was Sephardic, and she was having rice. You can't eat rice.
Exactly, right? Thank you, Doug. That's a perfect example. So it's not about your diet. It's not even about what you do. Judaism, your identity is not something you can change by just acting a certain way. It's what you are. Maybe, by the way, I don't know, I'm just kind of off the fly. is controversial with the whole bathroom gender identity. Question is, could you change your identity because you went under the knife? I mean, it's a good question. This is what you are. You can't change it. There's an old joke, which I'm sure you guys have heard it before, where in the old days, with the very religious Christians, they really wanted to convert Jews, so they would pay Jews to convert. So there was one guy, like I say, couldn't be a doctor, couldn't be a lawyer, couldn't own land. So he hit upon an idea, a business venture. He would travel from parish to parish. This is an old country, no phones, right? He'd travel from parish to parish, and he would convert, and he would send the money back to his family in his shtetl. That was his business. So he came to one parish, and the priest wasn't an idiot. He said, "Hey, you got to stay here for a few months, and you got to study." Yeah, sure. He knew the whole drill, 100% study. I love, everything. So finally, it came time to convert. The priest brings him into a bath or a pool, whatever it is they do, and he dunks him in. He says, "You're no longer a Jew. You're a Christian. You're no longer a Jew." 3 times he dunks him. He said, "Listen, now that you're Christian, we have certain laws. On Friday night, you can't eat meat. Not eat meat. Lent or something. You can't eat meat, right?" He says, "Okay, whatever you say, 100%, no meat, right?" Comes Friday night, Shabbos, right? Shabbos is fish and chicken, meat, right? It's Shabbos. What are you talking about? How does the Shabbos go by? You don't have a proper meal. So after a few weeks, the priest decides to check up on his new congregant. He comes in, he smells Friday afternoon. He smells chicken cooking. Knocks on the door. He walks in and says, "Do I smell chicken? Chicken on a Friday? God forbid!" So really, because it really smells like chicken. "Do you mind if I?" "Sure, come into the kitchen." He opens up the pot, and right there, nice chicken, honey glazed chicken. She says, "I thought we said no chicken." He said, "What chicken? Where chicken? I don't see a chicken." I said, "What am I, an idiot? Is the chicken?" I said, "No, it's a fish." She says, I know I'm a godly man, but I'm not stupid. That's chicken." He says, "Father, let me explain to you. Remember a few weeks ago, you put me in the bath, and you said you're no longer a Jew, you're a Christian? I took the chicken, I put it into a bath, and I sprinkled some holy water and said, you're no longer a chicken, you're a fish, you're a fish, you're a fish." Right? It doesn't work that way. Religion, your identity doesn't work that way. So if you practice, good. If you don't practice, it's not good, but it doesn't change. You are who you are. It's in your DNA. You can't change your DNA, because every single person was created for a purpose. Every person has a calling. Every person has a reason to exist. You can't change that mission. You can't say, "All right, the reason I exist today is different from yesterday." It doesn't work that way. So that's why Judaism doesn't have an opt-out. And not only that, even people. I'm going to show a video of the Rebbe talking about a woman. Woman was named Miriam Bas Bilga. Miriam Bas Bilga lived in the times of the Second Temple, and she was far from being religious. She was married to a Greek officer, and when the Greeks, it is before the story of Hanukkah, when the Greeks stormed the temple and took over, she went, and this is a woman who wasn't practicing nothing. She took her shoe, and she whacked the altar. She stomped the altar. And she screamed and she said, "Altar is a wolf, wolf. You take the money of the Jewish people for sacrifices, and you don't listen." So the Rebbe in this clip I'm going to show was asking a question. I don't understand. If you're religious, who are you screaming at? Check out this clip. I wanted to include it, but this website is a little bit particular about copyright. So I have to play it straight off their website. Here you go. Great.
This is Jews in the movie.
Was ist das der Schwarze bedauert? Was soll das was Jüdisch? Sagt im Posik in Spanien, die erwagt essen, die Deutsch in Kol, die Jahre soll kein Erdke da legen, es alle legen. Und das, was mir wohnt da ist, verwohnt tut an der Welt und oder parallel ist es mit der Chavirische Welt. Ich sage, Archive ist die Gehe der Lebens und verwohnt tut nichts, wie sie macht. Ach, man ist lange zu kommen. umgerufen mit Kopflich Stolz und es wird umgerufen mit die Balle der Hochule mit allen Brüchen. Aber Bejemes ist Israel. Und als Gerte sein Kern ist das nicht in Nachnus und wo sie so der Bebischen allein. A jüdische Mädel, was in mir und Dosselach man gesagt. Wenn ich sage, ist der Bebischen Lekei, was sie wird sich fühlen, als die Zersetzen ist wer. Und doch weiß man die Gräßkeit von einer jüdischen Mischung. Auf große, die gewöhnliche Zähne ist, was das sich mit Tibel getan. Bis a Dollar Achishofu. Bleibt Bechostku, Bechas, Achet, Häuser, Baumne, Hite, nie das muss im Husaway. Und die Corona oder der Fahrige Welle nicht, ist a sehr niedrige Gefallen, was sie konnte durch ihre Risko mit der Lille, der Thema Zeit, Thema Schreine. Und wie Rashi sagt, und der Pirus Rashi, das Hamesh, meist von im Kochen. Und von Wärme durch Wärme in das Niskali geworden und er rote Hero durch Pilger, durch Lieder das Pilger. Ist davon verstandig, aber Hermes ist das Steak. Aber dann sind doch wie der Rambam sagt, Yitzri Yonsi. Ich höre auch mal in Islam, Yitzri Yonsi in Adam in Levi. Aber wir ja sein, von ihm Chas geschoben.
All right. Okay, back to our. All right. So the Rebbe says something very powerful. So here was a woman who denounced Judaism, and actually she was from a priestly family. A priestly family was punished. If she denounced Judaism, why would you care? Because as the Rebbe explained, because there's no such thing as a Jew who denounces Judaism and is out. No such thing. And which this is going to lead us to our next question. This is, why did our ancestors continue to identify as Jews despite being victims of so much suffering through the ages? If there's so much, we all know, like you said, that people don't know about the Inquisition, but we have a long memory. So why don't you just give up? First the video.
(1942) was not a good year for the Jews. The planet vibrated with unprecedented war, and the Nazis began implementing their final solution to the Jewish problem, opening extermination camps across Europe. It was the turn of Bernard Lewis, a Jewish corporal serving in the intelligence corps of the British Army, to perform guard duty. His partner on duty that night was a non-Jewish gentleman named George. Bernard was born in 1916 in London, England. While preparing for his bar mitzvah, he became fascinated by history and languages. He pursued these interests with determination, with remarkable results. Now in his 99th year, Bernard Lewis is a celebrated academic, a prolific author, the bearer of 13 honorary doctorates, and a world-leading expert on Islam in the Middle East, whose opinions have advised foreign policy. But while standing guard in His Majesty's service that fateful night, with the steady backdrop of exploding shells and the unnerving rumble of falling bombs, his conversation with George was of a lighter nature. That is, until George suddenly threw him a personal question. "Am I right in thinking that you are Jewish?" Bernard answered proudly in the affirmative, but their chat was not over. "I have the impression that you are not a devout and observant Jew." "You are right," Bernard conceded. "But I don't understand. Why do you bother?" Bernard was confused. "You must agree that being Jewish is often difficult and sometimes dangerous. I can see that you may be ready to face persecution or death for your religious beliefs. But if you don't hold or live by those beliefs, then why bother?" An uneasy silence was disrupted by sporadic bombing. As the night grew darker and more dangerous, a profound, soul-shaking truth began to dawn in Bernard's mind. How easy it would be to avoid persecution or even inconvenience by not identifying as a Jew. He explained to George and to himself that there have always been some who indeed did not bother, finding the retention of Jewish identity to be dangerous, difficult, or merely burdensome. But for most, even for those whose religious faith is at best tenuous, and whose Jewish identity is overshadowed by other larger identities, denying that Jewish identity would be an act of falsehood, if not to others, then to oneself. Often, the brightest revelations emerge in moments of darkness. George questioned whether his colleague was Jewish because it was not at all obvious. Bernard did not wear his religion on his uniform sleeve, but as the temperature dropped and the rumble of war grew into a roar, Bernard realized that more dependably than a corporal's commitment to protecting his post, Jews across Europe and throughout millennia preserve their identity, simply because when a lifetime of deeds and thoughts are stripped aside, all that is left is one's core that neither metal nor fire can extinguish.
Okay. So, I mean, what the video basically says text 9A and B. It means what Bernard Lewis is saying here is, okay, had enough of you. He's saying here that text 111, saying even if it's hard, it's not that we don't want to. You can't change, you can't take off what you are. It says over there at the end of text 9b, but for those, even those whose religious faith is the best tenuous and whose Jewish identity is overshadowed by other larger identities, denying that Jewish identity would be an act of falsehood. It goes against who they are. And we can fool ourselves only to a point. The Shner Zalman of Liadi, author of the Tanya, writes something very strong in his book. He says that you have people who are not religious, but would give up their life for Judaism. So why? For what purpose? You're not observant. What do you care? Because he explains in short, he says, because observance they see as an outside of their identity. They don't see keeping Shabbos or keeping kosher as compromising on their Judaism. But you tell them to abandon your identity, he says, no, I'm sorry, that I can't do. But I'm going to kill you. Okay. You do whatever you got to do. I do whatever I have to do. And that's the way it's been for generations. And we have many stories of martyrs who were not great religious men, not holy people, really base people, didn't care an ounce about Judaism. But it comes down to a very strong point, which is you can't change who you are. The next question, we're going to skip ahead here to lesson 4, because we'll do Kaddish afterwards. But like I said, should we skip that question more? Actually, let's do Kaddish now. Actually, we'll do Kaddish now, then we'll go. All right. I'm going to go through this quickly because a lot of you are here for last course. So I'm going to do this very quickly. Why does a mourner say Kaddish? So if you remember from last course, the guy actually signs up his kid for a Hebrew school, and his father finds out this kid's learning Kaddish in Hebrew school to read Hebrew. So he calls up the teacher and says, I don't understand. Why are you teaching my kid Kaddish? I plan on living many years. He says, the rate your kid's learning Hebrew, by the time he's finished reading, he's going to need to say it, right? So one text number 10, if you remember from last course, it says every single person, every single human being represents a declaration of God's greatness. Right? Every single person is important. Every single person has something to contribute. And therefore, when a person is lacking, there's no one who is available to say, to declare God's greatness. See, this is, I'm paraphrasing, I'm going very short, but it says here in text number 113. Every single person has something to say, and when a person is deceased, there's a void. So when we say Kaddish, we fill that void. But the second point is we say Kaddish is also for the mourner, not only for the deceased, also for the mourner. Why? Because what do we say in Kaddish? Look at text number 11 on page 114. Yiskadal v'yiskadash mira, which means, may the great name of God be exalted and sanctified in the world that he created according to his will. Why are we mentioning that? Because when a person has a loss of a loved one, they usually have two reactions. Number one is, can't be. It's wrong. They say, whatever God did, not acceptable. Shouldn't have happened. And the other feeling is, obviously, the loss of a loved one. When we say Kaddish after the loss of a loved one, what we're saying is, we don't understand it, but at the same time, we know God controls the world. And there's no such thing, when you believe that God controls the world, as an unjustified act. Every act is justified, whether you understand it or not. Let me give you an example. It seems like a silly example. Before I was home, my 4-year-old wanted to have a snack. My wife said, no, it's going to be dinner soon. My kid started crying. That's unjustified. He didn't say the words, that's unjustified. But in reality, that's what you're saying. I want, and I'm hungry, and I'm entitled to a snack. My wife said, I'm sorry. You don't understand. I understand better. So what you might think is unjustified is not justified. So when we say Kaddish, what we're basically saying is we affirm our belief that Hashem, God, created the world, and every act is exact and perfect, and therefore, instead of focusing on what's not acceptable in our eyes, we focus on the loss that we have of our loved one. And that's the purpose of Kaddish. Okay, I'm kind of flying through some things here. Anyone have any questions? Input? No? Okay. Like I said last week, either I'm doing a very good job or I'm doing a very bad job. It's one of the two. All right. Yeah. So the mourner can drift from non-acceptance to healing. All right. Next topic. Well, what happened to my? All right, there you go. Okay. Next topic. We all have gone to the cemetery. We put stones on top of the headstone. What are we doing with this crazy stuff? Doug, you actually asked me, right? So the earliest Jewish source for this, you'll find in text number 12, page 115. Like a lady who in her final will and testament, she's with the lawyer. She writes, I want to be buried I don't want to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. So the lawyer said, but you're an observant Jew. You don't want to be buried with your people? He said, no. So where do you want to be buried? He says, I want to be buried under the threshold of Bloomingdale's. He says, why? He said, at least I know my kids will come see me, once in a while, right? So the earliest source for putting stones is from a Rabbi Shalom of Neustadt. You'll forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that European city. He lived in the 14th century. Austrian scholar. He was born in a place called Wiener Neustadt, and he was actually a very great rabbi. And he says the reason why, text number 12, the reason why we put a stone is in a way to bring honor to the deceased by indicating that people were at the grave. Based on what we said in the previous. I'm missing a slide here. All right, I'll get that in a second. So based on what we said in the previous course, that we're supposed to take a lesson from the one that passed on. So there's nothing sadder than a person who's forgotten. But if we come to the grave and we say, listen, you're not forgotten, and your lessons are important and they're being carried on, that's a very strong sign. So we put stones, but we don't put flowers. In fact, it's a very un-Jewish thing to put flowers. Gentiles do that. So we don't. We don't put flowers. Why don't we put flowers? What's the problem with flowers? Flowers are nice. In fact, the holiday of Shavuos is coming up. Now we put flowers. Why? So why should you put flowers? Because flowers are nice, right? That's the problem. Who are they nice for? The person who passed on. What do they care about physical niceties and nice flowers? You want to do something nice for them? Oop. Here you go. Want to do something nice for them? Do something spiritual. right now, after a person passes on, they exist in a spiritual way. So speak spiritual to them, right? My kids always hate it. Sometimes I want to tease them. Says, "Tati, tell me a story." So I'll start speaking to them in Hebrew or in Yiddish, just to drive them crazy, because that's my job, as a father, right? I said, "No, Tati, speak normally. Speak in English." So I start speaking with an English accent, right? The British accent, right? If you want to connect to a person who's on the other side, you got to speak their language. A person, a soul which is spiritual, speaks spiritual. Flowers represent that there's somehow connection and physical. That's not the case. It's a shtick. You know what shtick means? Joe, you know what shtick means? No.
Of course.
What?
I said, of course.
Shtick means you do it because that's the way it's done. Not necessarily is it constructive or not. Because everyone's doing it. I remember a story. I think I've told this story before. That when the Rebbe had his heart attack in 1977, so he had his heart attack on Simchas Torah. Well, we're still eating and drinking in the sukkah. So the Rebbe went out into the sukkah, and they came to the Rebbe and they said, "Here, drink orange juice. It's healthy." The Rebbe said, "I don't drink orange juice. Orange juice is an American shtick. The whole thing, every box of cereal has, a bowl of cereal and a cup of orange juice. It's a shtick. I mean, you do it because that's what society dictates. Meaning, it doesn't have an inherent value. So therefore, we don't put flowers. We do holy stuff. Okay. Now, there's physical beauty and the spiritual beauty. All right. Now we're going to skip ahead. All right. Now let's skip ahead. Lesson 4. We're going to skip ahead because, like I said, my wife is going to speak about the role of woman in Judaism next week. So, because if I say it, then you're going to say, yeah. Of course he's going to say that because he's a guy. But if it comes from my wife, then you guys might believe us or might believe her. I wouldn't. But yeah. Anyway, okay. Page number 144. Page 144. We're going to do. Because I'm taking out 2 questions from tonight's class, so we'll supplement it with 2. We'll replace it with 2 questions from next week's class. Page 144. Why doesn't Judaism seek converts? If we say we're enlightened and we have the Torah and everything else, then everybody should be Jewish. It would follow. But yet Jews don't proselytize to non-Jews. And even when a person comes to convert, we don't say, "Sure, walk in." What do? You say, "Nah, you don't want to be Jewish." There's a lot going on, and it's hard to be Jewish. Now you can do whatever you want. You don't want to be Jewish, right? Question is, why is this the Jewish way? So Christianity and Islam, they proselytize. They believe that the best thing you can be is following their religion, and they seek out converts, which makes sense because if you think this is the best way to connect to God, and someone comes and said, "I want to connect to God the same way," it should work. In fact, throughout history, talking about the Inquisition, throughout history, there's always been people who try to enforce their beliefs on someone else. And I always say this: when those 19 Meshuggahim crazies flew the planes on 9/11 and they killed those 3,000 people, they did those 3,000 people a favor. They really believe that. At least now, you're dying for a reason. Before, in the past, now you're just dying. But now, at least you'll die in the name of God, whichever God. And when they used to burn the Jews on the cross, same thing. In the Inquisition, how do you think they used to kill them? They used to burn them on the cross. They didn't think they were being, they didn't think they were being animalistic or savages. They thought, no, we're doing these people a favor. And that's why, because if we have the path to the Lord, if we have the path to God, then everybody should act and believe the way we do. So before we answer the question, let's just categorize what it is. In ancient time, every tribe had its own god. And when you went to war with your tribe, It wasn't just you going to war, it was your God going to war. So when you won, it wasn't because you won, it was because your God won. And your God defeated that God. It seems infantile, but this is really the way people thought. So it would only make sense that when your tribe conquered another tribe, then the tribe on the losing side would adapt your customs and your God. After all, why would you want to believe in a losing God? Right? That's like being a Knicks fan, right? Right? Why would you want to? Why would you want to follow a God that it doesn't make any sense? So we'll call that tribalism, right? You have many gods, but then there is universalism. One religion for all people. Judaism says this. No. There's one God for everybody. Everybody has the same God. If you remember the scene from The Frisco Kid, where Gene Wilder's sitting with the Indian, and the Indian saying, "Could your God make it rain or snow?" So the rabbi character, Gene Wilder, says, "Stop calling it my God. It's your God too." And the Indian said, No. I have enough trouble with my God. Don't give me more gods, right? Judaism says there's one God for everybody. So Judaism, what's interesting is, and Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes in text number 1 on page 144, right? It's interesting. Judaism gave birth to Christianity and Islam. And a lot of what they have comes from Judaism. But look at text number 1. He says there's certain things that they didn't take from Judaism. What Christianity and Islam they have is the one God. That's true. But what they left out is that they believe that the way to serve God is our way. Even when the Jews lived peacefully under the Muslims, they were considered the Himi, second-class citizens. And the Muslims didn't always persecute them, but many times when the Jews wanted something, we have many stories. Okay, convert. And then there were many stories, even when rabbis were friends of kings in Christian Europe. The kings would say, "You're a genius and you're great. There's only one thing wrong with you. You're Jewish." In fact, one of the most famous prayers we have on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the Nissan HaTokef, was written by Rabbi Amnon of Mainz. The legend is, at least. What happened? The king said, and he was very close to the king. The king said, put him in a position. He said, it would be really good if you converted. You'd be perfect. And Rabbi Amnon said, okay, give me 3 days. But what I'm trying to say is that they share a belief. Muslim and Christianity share a belief that in reality, if you want to go to heaven, you have to be one of us. Any Muslim will tell you this, whether he's a violent Muslim or not. Any Christian will tell you. They have to believe that. That's their belief. You have to believe, meaning what's going to happen to the people who are not Christians and not Muslims, they'll probably tell you, okay, God will sort that out. But they'll tell you, and if they're not being honest with you. You have to be Christian, or if you're Christian, you're Muslim, in order to get into heaven. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes that we don't believe that way. We believe there's one God, but there's multiple ways to serve Him. Look at what he says. It's very, very strong text. Text number 1 says there's no equivalent in Judaism to the doctrine outside the church. There's no salvation. On the contrary, Judaism's ancient sages maintained that the pious of the nations have a share in the world to come. It's in the Rambam, it's in the Talmud, that in fact, if you go to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, they have a whole section there for religious Gentiles. And in Israel, a lot of streets are named after Schindler, Raoul Wallenberg, and the other gentleman from Tokyo or Chinese. He made the visas. Why? Because we believe that you don't have to be Jewish in order to get to heaven. One has nothing to do with the other. And take, for example, the body, right? We all know the brain or the heart is the most important organ, right? Imagine every organ wanted to be the heart. It wouldn't be good. You need, in order for a body to function, see, I think the Rebbe, text number 2, the Rebbe says it. The Rebbe brings it down in a letter. And he says that every single one of us has a purpose. So the Jewish people have 613 commandments. Gentiles have seven Noahide commandments. And it doesn't mean Jews are we'll get to this in a second about being chosen. Doesn't mean that in order to go to heaven, you have to do all 613 commandments. If you don't do 613, then you're not going to heaven. That's not true. Jewish sources are very, very clear that a Gentile who keeps the 7 Noahide commandments has a share in the world to come, just like a Jew. So, like the Rebbe writes in the end of the 3rd paragraph, it says, of course, one would wonder, why did God choose one nation out of all kind? That's the way God did it. But this would be like asking, why must the human body consist of a variety of different parts, from the brain and the heart to the foot and the soul? Why not make it all the heart and all heart or all brain? So therefore, a person comes to a rabbi and says, I want to convert. Why do you want to convert? I want to get into heaven. For that, you want to convert? You don't have to convert it. You can be a very good Gentile and get it to heaven. That's not the reason. That's not the reason to convert. So that's the question, though. If that's the position, then you should have another question. No one has another question. If everybody's perfect the way they are, then how do we allow conversion altogether? Right? No? Make sense? The question? If a guy comes and says, I want to convert, and we tell him, no, you don't have to convert. You're perfect the way you are. The way you are, that's the way God wants you. But we know some people do convert. Why? So there's a Gemara. Look at text number 3. There's a Gemara on page 146. The Gemara, pay attention very close to the text over here. It says, a proselyte that converts is compared to an infant at birth. It says, a convert who converts. So what we're saying over here is that there's 3 categories of people. There's a Jew, and we said before, a Jew can't un-Jewify himself. So you are what you are. And then there's a Gentile, and a Gentile is always a Gentile. And then there's a person who's not yet a Jew. A person who was born to non-Jewish parents, but has a Jewish soul. And God, just like Avram and Sarah, God took great pleasure in them seeking out God and becoming Jewish people. So there's always going to be people who, for whatever reason, they're born into a non-Jewish family, but they have a Jewish soul, and God wants them to search and to come to the Jewish roots. So that's where the concept of conversion comes from, which leads us into the next conversation. Now we have 613, and there's 7. Why do we have 613? Because we're the chosen people. Isn't that racist? No, okay, maybe not racist, because racist means you treat a race of people, but there's no such thing as a Jewish race, because we come in all different shapes and sizes and colors. But definitely chauvinistic or prejudiced. Maybe in the old days this would work, but in the new days we're all united, one big society. This is not a very popular sentiment. And a person could say it's particularly this kind of thinking that gets you to the Holocaust. So if you're the and why do people hate us? Because we're going around saying, hey, we're chosen. What do you mean? Somebody walks around with their nose in the air. What are you going to do? You knock them down, right? So why do we go around saying we're the chosen people?
Well, you answered that before, and you said our job is to show the light.
Right.
That's our job. We're transformation of the world. Doesn't mean converting people, whatever. As a Jew, that's what a Jew is supposed to do. Be the light. So
at least somebody's listening. So the question is chosen, but chosen for what? Look at text number 4a. This is where the whole concept of chosen people come from. Text number 4a is page 147. God says, he said right before the giving of the Torah, which we're going to have the holiday of Shavuot coming up in June 12th, so it's a few weeks from Sunday. It says you're going to be a treasure out of all people, for mine is entire earth. You shall be a kingdom, a priest, and a holy nation. So what does that mean? What does it mean, a treasure from out of all people and a kingdom of priests? So look what the Sforno wrote a commentary on the Torah. He says something very interesting. Text number 4b, page 148. He says, doesn't say that you're good and everyone else is bad. And all humanity is precious. All humanity is precious. But out of all the precious people, you are my treasure. It's like, let's take, for example, women have jewelry, right? So let's say you have a few pieces of jewelry. Right? A few pieces of jewelry. And I'm sure out of all the jewelry, one of them is your favorite. Does that mean the other pieces of jewelry are, I don't like it, so it's not gold anymore? No, every single piece of jewelry is jewelry. Just some of them are more precious to you. There's a very powerful medrash. Did we bring it up in this class before? I'm not sure. We are at the splitting of the sea. The angels, the medrash tells us that the splitting of the sea, the angels in heaven were dancing at the downfall of the Egyptians, and they're being drowned. So God turns to the angels and says, my creatures, my creations are suffering, and you're dancing? And these were bad guys. These were people who did terrible things. But the first thing we have to put out of the way is, chosen people doesn't mean that the people who are not chosen, the Gentiles, is somehow they're on a lower level, or they're bad, or they're subject to suffering. And over here, by the way, I'll plug a book by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs called Not in God's Name, all about religious violence. And he devotes a chapter toward these few verses. So what does it mean, chosen? I mean, everybody is holy. Certain people are selected. Selected doesn't mean you're better, and that means we have a right to abuse other people. And he says, now, chosen for what? What does it mean you're chosen? Put it this way. And if everybody's special, then no one's special. So what does it mean you're special? Look at text number 4c. He says, and like Doug pointed out, says, we're chosen to do a job. We're chosen to be the light unto the nations. We're chosen to show people what it means to live your life with the knowledge that God's presence pervades the entire world. That's our job. And by the way, we're doing a very good job. The world is a lot better today than it was 4,000 years ago. I mean, last week's parsha we read, God warns parents, don't kill your kids in the name of idol worship. Back then, people would take their firstborn kid and they would throw them into the fire. That idol worship was called the Molech. These days, I mean, those people are locked, they're insane. I mean, and that's only one area. But in general, the world is a much more populated place. And put it this way, Abraham had to put his wife in a box because he was afraid the Egyptians were going to kill him because he had a good-looking wife. I mean, today, people don't hide their good-looking wives; they parade them. Right? We live in a whole different world. Why? Because the Jewish people, we have this job to make everyone realize that there's a code of conduct which God expects of you. So all the morality and the ethics of the world, the progressiveness of the world, that didn't happen on its own. And in fact, Hasidus explains the very reason why Jews have been dispersed throughout the entire world, which means in the beginning the belief was that we were kicked out of the land of Israel for our sins. And that's true, but punishment could only go for so long. So Kabbalah, the mystics search for a reason. What could be the deeper reason why we were dispersed all over the world? And they found out and they learned out that the reason why the Jews are all over the world is to teach everybody. Okay, the land of Israel is holy. We get it. Now make the whole world holy. Now make sure the world lives not like savages, but like model people. And you see, there's a great text. I actually have one of the books here in text B, History of the Jews. I have it here on the shelf. Text 5A and 5B. 5A, John Adams. Doug, ask these people who asked about the Inquisition if they ever heard of John Adams. No. I forget it, right?
It makes beer in Massachusetts.
Right, exactly. No, that's Sam Adams. This is his cousin.
That was a
Cousin. I think they really were cousins, by the way. They were, yeah. So John Adams, he responded to an article from an English journalist, an anti-Semitic article about against Jews, obviously anti-Semitic, and he writes. If you look at page 149, 5a. He says something very powerful. He said it's because of the Jewish people that It's because of the Jewish people that there's the doctrine of supreme, intelligent, wise, almighty sovereign of the universe. This didn't happen all time. So the fact that there's peace in the world, it's because the Torah has advocated this thought, this belief that every single person is created in the divine image. So what does being chosen mean? Being chosen means we're chosen to teach a lesson. We have a responsibility to guide. A second point, we'll do it quickly. On see text number 6, Rashi says something not opposite. He says something different. He says, page 151. He says that just like a king has all his valuable vessels and precious stones, so you have my treasure among treasures. That means everybody's special. You're just a little more special. So you might think, hey, that doesn't answer the question. That's going to lead to haughtiness, right? Because if I know the guy who's the guy, right? You know, I think these days it's called name dropping, right? If let's say you go out for lunch, well, Bill Gates, you don't say, oh, by the way, whatever, I was late. You say, hey, I had lunch with, right? They're Jewish people, chosen. We're chosen by. So, but when you're name dropping Bill Gates, it can work that way. But when you're name dropping God, it doesn't work that way. Because being close to God doesn't lead to arrogance; it leads to humility. Because being close to God means you're close to the truth, and the truth is that He's significant and you're insignificant. And the closer you are to God, the more you feel the truth. So don't worry about it. So look at text number 7. What the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya. Closeness to God, he says, brings a feeling of humility. Because when you're in the presence of greatness, you realize how not great you are, and no one's greater than Him. So we say we're closer to God. We're not gonna go ahead and be arrogant about it. Actually, we realize we're not gonna get excited about ourselves. Like in this week in Pirkei Avot, we read a line. It says, if you learn a lot of Torah, if you're a big Torah scholar, don't get excited. That's exactly why you're created. It's interesting, it's the scholarly people who are always learning, meaning they always realize that they have something to learn. It's the foolish people who think they know everything. So the closer you are to the truth, the more you realize that you have a lot to learn. Okay, let's go back to section 3. All right, page. I lost my own page. Here we go. Right? Here we go. Page 120. Why doesn't God listen? Right? And by the way, this is a question people have. As a rabbi, I prayed. I prayed with all my heart. I was sincere, and God didn't listen. He didn't see to my request. How come God doesn't respond to request? This is a very powerful question. So first of all, you're not alone. We have a history of God not listening. Moshe wanted to go into the land of Israel. And when God said, Moses is not going into the land of Israel, I think Moses just said, okay, God, whatever you say goes. No, he prayed. And it says he prayed 515 times. He didn't want to take no for an answer. Until God says, Moshe, how do I get this through into your head? It's no. There's some no's that are no's and some no's that are not yet yeses. Right? So Moshe was trying to push the issue. So he says no. But we find other holy people were answered, right? Abraham and Sarah wanted a kid. They prayed. They had a child. Rachel and Yaakov, Isaac and Rebecca, Hannah. All these people were answered. How come Moshe wasn't answered? How come we're not answered? So first of all, we have to bring up what we learned in last week's parsha. In last week's class, prayer is not about stuff. We don't pray to God when our bank account is hitting low. Is oh my God, we need to pray to God so to please wire over some funds. If you remember, prayer is about connecting. Right? The word tefillah comes from the word connecting. So it's not only about stuff. It's about the relationship. That being said, okay, so you had a relationship. But I still want God to answer me. Right? Very nice that I had a relationship. I'm uniting with him. How come he doesn't answer me? Or how come the answer is no? Look what Rabbi Moshe of Trani says. Text number 17, page 120. He was a king in the 16th. He was a rabbi in the 16th century. And he says, "Who says you're getting a no? You think that because you don't get the answer right away, it's a no." He actually says it's always a yes. Sometimes the yes is in a long time, right? But parents never told the kids, or your parents never told you you'll understand when you're older. What can I understand now? Because you can't understand now. Is that a no? It's not a no. Right? A kid who's 14, speaking to somebody. This kid, 14, wants a car. No, you can't get a car. Why? Because you can't. The yes will be when you're 16, 17, 18. The answer's not now. Is that a no? Not a no. It's just not yet yes. It says, that's what he says over here. And we see that God didn't say no to Moshe. In fact, he said yes. Proof, he showed Moshe the entire land. And
516th time could have been a yes.
Actually, by the way, you should know, it says that. It says God knew he was about to give in, so he told Moshe, stop. You better stop. And Moshe had to listen. But actually, it does say that. Moshe said, if you would have done it 516th time, it's a whole discussion if Moshe prayed 516 and beyond. But some people say he didn't, right? So we're all looking for the answer we want, and we want the answer now. Remember when I was younger, I used to ask my father something, and sometimes, he used to say no. A lot of the times, I'm very traumatized. He used to say no. And what does the kid say when his father says no? Why? Why saying no? Sometimes my father would just, not pay attention, not answer me. Sometimes he'd say, I don't understand. If I would have told you yes, you would ask why? No. Why? Right? So there's no such thing as God says no. But the fact of the matter is that Hashem is the creator. Hashem is the creator of the world. And he knows what's good for you and when it's good for you. So you're asking based on your limited understanding of how things should be. So based on your understanding, that's the way it should be. God's saying, okay, that's the way you understand it. But the way I understand it, which is infinitely greater than yours, it's not the way it is. So we have to remember, we're here to serve God, not vice versa. God's not our waiter. Oh, can I get you anything? We're here to serve Him. Now, obviously, we ask that God should fill our request, but it doesn't mean that when God doesn't fill our request, we say, "All right, going to another restaurant." It doesn't work that way. So right. Sometimes it's right away, and sometimes it's later on. It has nothing to do with how we believe. All right, final question for the night. This is a very strong topic, very hard topic. Hopefully, we can do it in a lot of time. Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev, I'll preface it with a story. Every year before Rosh Hashanah, he used to always try to find a reason why the Jewish people should be inscribed for a good year. One year he came up with an ingenious argument. He said, God, you're a funny guy. You're a tricky guy. You put all the evil pleasures of the world and all the wrong things outside where we can see them. And he put the pleasures of Garden of Eden and heaven and all the beauty of spirituality in the books. If you would have put heaven, Garden of Eden outside, and all the pleasures of the world in the books, everybody wouldn't do anything wrong. So whose fault is it? Is it the Jewish people's fault? Is it your fault? It's your fault, he says. You didn't create a level playing field. But look at this. God wants us to be holy. Right? He's like, hey, be holy. So what does he do? To make it interesting, he instills in us an inclination for selfish or if it's untamed, negative desires. We all struggle with it. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't struggle with negative inclinations towards whatever it is. Anger, arrogance, greed, lust, jealousy, selfishness. Right? Why? Why did God do that? If God wanted us to do holy things all the time, why did he create the evil inclination? So let's look what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that when Moshe went up on Mount Sinai, from Mount Sinai to heaven to get the Torah, so the angel said, what's this guy doing here? So God said, he's here to give the Torah. So the angel said, you're going to give the Torah to a human being? Leave it with us. We're holy. So God told Moshe, that's a very good argument. Answered him back. So Moshe says, okay. It says in the Torah, I am your God, took you out of Egypt. You were in Egypt. You worked. Honor your father and mother. You have a father and mother. It says, don't take God in name. Do you engage in business that you should have an oath? Do you have an evil inclination to commit murder or adultery? When the angels heard this, oh, he's right. That whole story doesn't make any sense. The angels didn't know all these things that were in the Torah. If they didn't know, then why do they ask for it? Obviously, they knew the Torah. They were asking for it. So they knew the Torah said, honor your father and mother. So what were they asking for? So the answer is like this. Well, see, that's a question for discussion, page 124. So I preempted your question. Answers like this. The Torah, there's two sides to everything, not only the Torah. There's a spiritual reality and a physical reality. It says when the souls, to tie into our last course, journey of the soul goes to the Garden of Eden. What do the souls do in the Garden of Eden the whole day? You guys know? What are they doing the whole day? Like drinking martinis, right? On the beach? No, they're learning Torah. See, I'll ask you a question. You think they're learning Torah about one guy punches another guy and he has to pay him? That's what they're learning in the Garden of Eden about a bull falling into a pit? What do they know about a bull? Remember, we said we don't give flowers. Why? Because they're not a physical entity. They're a spiritual entity. They don't know of flowers. They don't know of bulls and pits and everything else. So everything in the world, there's a spiritual reality and a physical reality, including the Torah. That means there's the way the Torah can be understood in a physical, practical way. And then there's the spiritual, or called the mystical. So if you open up Kabbalah, in order to discussing it, it's discussing what every mitzvah, what the Torah is on a spiritual level. That's why a lot of it doesn't make any sense. That's why, going back to what we discussed, you can't separate one from the other. You can't separate the spiritual reality from the physical reality. They're two sides to one coin. So the angels, they knew the Torah, but what they were saying, they wanted to have it, leave it on the spiritual level. So now we understand what the angels claim. So how did Moshe answer the question? So and obviously it was a good answer because the angels acceded to his request. So the Torah is primarily supernal, but Moshe's response is like this. Look what he says. He says, "Did you face challenges of living in Egypt, surrounded by evil and all that? You slaves, do you have a challenge of living in an environment in which you interact with all these bad people and you have to fight off influence?" He says like this. You have over here the external, meaning angels are in the realm of spirituality all the time. Do they have a possibility to be influenced? No. There's no bad influence because they're in holiness all the time. So there's no struggle. And then internally, it says honoring father and mother. Do you know honoring father and mother is the most impossible mitzvah to do? It's right up there with learning Torah. Learning Torah, you have an obligation to do every second. Honoring your father and mother, it says it's almost impossible to do because there's always something more you can do and there's always something you can make it better. No one does it perfectly. And why is it so hard? Because I have my own agenda. I have what I have to do and everything else. So you don't have that internal struggle. And then in all those other things, right? We have, when someone has something that we want, we feel jealous. You struggle with jealousy. Meaning you don't have a struggle. To you, everything is absolute truth. And the angels are seated. Why? Because in the Tanya, it's actually text 20. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But the Alter Rebbe says something unbelievable. And he explains. Let me ask you the question. Do you think every person is supposed to strive to be a tzaddik, a righteous person? a holy, complete, righteous person? Is that something we're supposed to strive for? Some kind of goal we should reach? The answer is no. Because the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, a righteous person means you have no impulse for evil. That's something out of your hands. Alter Rebbe, the hero of the Tanya, the hero of his book, is called the intermediate man, the regular man, who has an impulse for evil, yet he overcomes it. That's where God is. God is not in perfect people. If God wanted perfection, he wouldn't have created the world, because he's perfect. How much more perfect than him can you get? God created the world because we're imperfect. It's exactly because we're imperfect, that's why he created us. Angels are perfect. What do I need them for? If the angels were the reason for creation, he would have stopped there. He made a physical world with imperfect people, which tells us this is what he wants. Look at text number 19. The Medrash says something crazy. It says on the third day of creation, it says, and God saw, and it was good. It was very, very, not creation. It said about the creation of the world, it says, God saw it was good, it was very good. What's the very? He says, the good is a good inclination. Very good means the evil inclination. That means God is calling our evil inclination, which pulls us in the direction of all these negative, bad, selfish behaviors, good. Not only good, very good. Why? Because it's when we overcome those struggles, that's where the geschmack is. That's where the pleasure is. Many Shabbosim ago, I told the story. I know I could tell it again. It's been many weeks. Where there was a kid who goes over to his rabbi. This was in Jerusalem, and the rabbi is very, didn't know about sports or anything else. He said, Rabbi, I'm not going to be at class tomorrow night. He says, why? I can't tell you. I said, why? He said, you won't understand. I said, well, try me. So you're going to be angry with me? I said, I promise you, I won't get angry at you. Explain to me. He says, the rabbi doesn't know anything about soccer. The guy's learned Torah his whole life. He doesn't know anything about sports. So he says, there's a soccer team called Maccabi Tel Aviv, and tomorrow they're playing in the championship. So what is it? It's soccer. So what's soccer? So explains to the rabbi, there's 11 guys on the field one side, 11 guys on the other side, and they have to kick it into the other goal. So the rabbi said, I got an idea. Why don't you go into the stadium in the morning, kick the ball into the net, and then you can be at class tomorrow night. I said, come on, Rabbi, it doesn't work that way. So why not? Because the whole point is the other 11 guys. So what do you mean? Yeah, exactly. When the other 11 guys are not there, you kick it in. Perfect. Great plan. No, that's no trick. In Yiddish, it's no kunt, it's no trick. The whole purpose is when someone's trying to stop you, and that's when you score. I said, exactly. It's particularly when you have the urge not to come learn, and you overcome that urge. That's where the beauty is. And Alter Rebbe writes, going back to text number 20, and he says, if you get depressed, I have these urges for things that I thought I was better than that. Why can't I just be a holy person? He says, first of all, you're conceited because you think a lot more of yourself than you really are. Let's go back to here, right? He says, so first of all, he writes over there, says, first of all, you're conceited. You think a lot more of yourself than what you really are. You think you don't have any negative impulses, and you do. So first of all, get with the program. And number two, the negative impulses is exactly why you're created, to overcome it. It's when we struggle. Angels can't struggle. They don't struggle. You have to be happy with a challenge. So this puts a whole different spin. So God didn't create, negative impulses to trick us and to lead us and to make us sin. And you would say, hey, it's not our fault. No, God put the challenge there so we can overcome it. And when we overcome it, then we're truly holy. Which it's a little late, but just very quick. I'll go quick if you guys don't shoot me. This whole talk about Judaism and how does homosexuality fit into the Torah? So the Rebbe once spoke about this and said that some people have this approach, not only in Judaism, in other places, that if the Torah says that you can't do it, then it's false. That people are not so inclined. They don't have that sexual desire towards towards the same sex. And the Rebbe says that's not true. If it's in the Torah, that means obviously people have that struggle. If people didn't struggle with it, the Torah wouldn't put it in. And if people couldn't overcome the struggle, the Rebbe continues, then the Torah would have asked you not to do it. Because God only asks you to do things you can do. So if God's saying, I don't want you to behave in a certain way, what he's saying is, I understand you're inclined towards certain behavior. Let's take an extreme example. Hopefully all you guys say no. Right? All you guys agree that killing is bad, right? Please say yes. Yeah, right? What are the questions? What are the questions? Why does God have to tell us not to kill people? I don't know not to kill people. You ever ask yourself that question? The answer is, it's the same answer. Well, God is saying, I understand you're angry, and I understand you think you deserve it, but until you check with me, you don't do it. And you imagine the Germans would have thought to themselves, the Jews are vermin, and they're despicable, and they have to be wiped out. But let's check with God, let's see what he says first. Imagine that conversation would have happened. There would be no Holocaust. So any behavior, it doesn't make a difference what you're inclined to. The inclination is true. A person could be attracted to the same sex. A person could be attracted to whatever it is. The Torah speaks about laying with animals, laying with family members. The Torah speaks about eating insects and drinking blood. What doesn't make a difference what the behavior is. God's saying, I understand you're inclined to do it, but I'm telling you, don't do it. And if I'm telling you don't do it, you have the ability to do it. And the greater the struggle, the more pleasurable, the more rewarding it is. And the struggle for in the intimate area is very, very strong, and it's very, very tremendous. But there's a great letter. The Rebbe wrote this in the letter. A person wrote to the Rebbe and said, I'm struggling with this. I think the Rebbe wrote, I feel like a woman. So the Rebbe said to him, the Rebbe didn't say, you're mashug in the head, you're crazy in the head, what do you get these foolish ideas? The Rebbe said to him, if God created you as a man, then that's what you're supposed to be. And if you have this impulse, that means you have the ability to overcome it. So why God does it? You're not going to get a good answer. You're not going to get any answer. So saying, "Oh, it's hard for me." I know it's hard. I understand it's hard. But what God's saying is, don't do it. So you have the impulse, don't do it. And if you overcome that urge, then you're a much stronger person. Now I'll end off with one line from Pirkei Avot, from the Ethics of Our Fathers. It says, you want to know what real liberty is? Real freedom? Freedom is Torah. And an obvious question is, what are you talking about? The 613 commandments. How do you say that? Because the Torah gives you the ability to choose what to do. If you act impulsively, you're not free. You're a prisoner to yourself. If you can choose your behavior and you can overcome your desires and impulses, then you're truly a master of yourself. And that's a true whole person. All right. Then this is next week. So about Jewish woman, featuring my wife. If you don't understand her next week, I don't blame you. I have the same problem, right? Kidding. Do we believe in free choice? This is a great question. Very powerful question. If God knows everything, if God is beyond the realm of time, then how do we have free choice? And Torah says about slavery. What about humanity? Why so many details? And if Shabbat's a holy day, why are we doing intimacy in Shabbat? And why does the Torah call intimacy knowing? And shouldn't all kosher be vegan? And why do we say l'chaim? We'll end off with l'chaim. All right, any questions?